Hello everyone, welcome back to a new vlog. Welcome if you're new here. Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a full-time writing instructor and a part-time content creator and indie author. Welcome back to all of my returning viewers. It is lovely to have you all here. It's Thursday. It's June 1st. How did that happen? It is morning. It is only 9:18. I am not usually up this early, especially during summer break. I do understand 9 is not that early for most people. It's early for me, and I've been up since 8. I'm waiting for maintenance. They're not gonna come this morning, I'm sure, but they could come this morning. So I had to be up and like dressed and ready just in case. Mom and I are going to Whole Foods, but not, she wasn't gonna leave her place until like 10 at the earliest, she thought. So I've got some time. I got very little sleep last night. I think because I knew I was gonna have to wake up early. Like, I was in bed for 8.5 hours. I only got 5 hours of sleep. I just couldn't sleep. Hopefully I will sleep tonight. So I'm a bit tired, so I thought I would try to do some of my writing this morning because I don't know how much energy I'm gonna have later this afternoon. But I also, in this vlog, wanted to talk about planning and writing a series. I had someone leave a comment on a recent video. Let's see, Renee left the comment. Renee asked, I'd love to see a video on planning and outlining a series or the steps to planning a series. I'm planning on trying to write an interconnected series and just not sure where to start to plan it. And I've had someone ask me to do this video in the past, so I thought we would do this as a vlog integrated style video. We will do some writing in between the talking. So if you just want to hear about planning and writing a series, you can skip through the writing montages. Before I start writing, I figured I would start off with different types of series and things to kind of be aware of. Like, your first choice that you have to make is what kind of a series are you going to write. So I'm looking at my notes. If you see me looking off, I'm looking at my notes, I promise. There are two main types that I find. If you Google different types of series, some people will say there's 3 types. Some people might say there's even more types. I think some people take the two main types and break them down into other categories, but basically there are two main types. You can either have books that have a series plot arc that starts in book 1 and ends in the last book of the series, and there might be mini plot arcs within each book, but ultimately those plot arcs are all feeding into that main overarching series plot arc. And so everything that happens in each book is building you towards what will eventually happen at the end. And then there are self-contained, or another word I've heard used is episodic series, and those are books where the plot arc is just for each individual book. So each individual book has its own story, its own plot that starts at the beginning of that book and ends by the end of that book, and it doesn't continue to the next book. These books usually follow the same cast of characters or are set around the same setting, and they could have an overall series plot arc, but that's not the main focus of each book. That's more of like a background story. So like one of my favorite cozy mystery series by Nancy Warren, the Vampire Knitting Club, each book is its own mystery and its own mystery plot, but then across the first like 16 books, there is like a romance plot arc that unfolds between the main male character and main female character. And so it takes a long time for that plot arc to unfold. It's just little bits of progress in each book, but there is that overarching series plot arc. I think that's one of the reasons why you could like break episodic series up into 2 different types. You could have one that is truly each episode in each book, no continuing plot arc, or you could have one that is individual plot arcs in each episode, each installment of the series, but then also have that overarching plot arc. So you could make this a lot more complicated in terms of how many different types of series there are, but basically 2. Don't overcomplicate things when you're first starting out. 2 different types of series. Ones that spread across the full arc and where the series has a definitive end point, or open-ended series that are each installment is its own plot that then just you can continue to the next. So you'll find different information online, but to me these are the two most common types, and any other series is just going to be a variation of one of those two. As with any writing or any kind of writing or writing any genre, rules are meant to be broken. So we can have these two basic types of series, but then you can mix and match different elements. You can get really creative. But I think it's important to kind of understand these two main types and then consciously deviate from those if you want to. But if you're writing your first series, I would recommend sticking to one of those two types and start breaking those rules once you've written a series and feel like you've done that and you know what you're doing. So those are the basic kinds of series. Oh, another term you might hear often, especially in the indie writing world, indie publishing world, is interconnected standalones. And that's another term for the kind of self-contained or episodic series. Don't get too confused by the different terms. Just think about it as there's one type of series that is a fixed number of books and will end when you get to the end of that overarching series plot idea. And there are books that could continue indefinitely, where each book is its own plot, its own story arc, but it's connected by the same world or the same characters or something like that, and so you could just keep going for as many books as you wanted. Interconnected standalones could be an episodic series, but they could be even less connected than that. So I've seen series that are, or books that are kind of marketed as a series that have nothing in common between the books, or they have just the tiniest bit of commonality of references to characters or locations from other books, but they're connected by like a theme. When you're looking at indie publishing, everyone will say write a series. Series are easier to sell as an indie author than standalones. But if all of your ideas for books are standalones and you don't want to write a series, you could make them a very tentatively interconnected standalone series. So just some little bit in each book that references the previous book in the series, but it's still a completely different thing and it's its own thing. There really are a number of ways to approach these two different main types of series. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're being told write a series, but you're like, I don't want to write a series, I want to write the standalones. If you can find some way of connecting those standalones, even if it's a very tenuous connection, you could still then market it as an interconnected standalone series. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the different types of series. I'm gonna do some writing. We're still working in chapter 15 in my interconnected standalone series, Independent Hearts. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. I'm currently up to 76,875 words, and I have a goal today of 889 according to Scrivener. It's come way down because I did 1,500 words instead of only 912 yesterday, so that's fantastic. I'm gonna try to get to 889 before I leave to go to Whole Foods, but then I would like to try to get to at least 1,000. So yeah, so let me get started and we'll talk more about series in a little bit. Okay, done 230 words, but I have finished chapter 15 and we are moving on to chapter 16. So before I do that, let's talk about how I outline my current series. So I primarily do episodic standalone series, although I do have a continuing series that I haven't published. I'll talk about that later in this video. How I outline my current series and how I outline episodic standalone series in general is I usually have an idea in mind of how the series will unfold and what I want to do with it, but I do like to stay flexible. And each one has been a little bit different, and each series of the 3 that I'm currently working on, I've learned from what I've done with the first one. So it is a learning process, and you do just kind of have to dive in and see what happens. So I have 3 series. Across the Pond, which is my contemporary romance, London-based romance series. Independent Hearts, which is even more of an interconnected standalone series. We'll talk about that in a moment. And that's small town cozy romance. And then my Royal Romance series, which is not yet published. I'm still working on book 1, but that will be a little bit more like Across the Pond, where there's even more of like more connection between the two. So I think this is the difference between Across the Pond and Independent Hearts. Independent Hearts is truly standalone, connected by a common world and common characters, but you could, like, there's only 2 books right now. I'm working on the 3rd. You could read book 3 without reading the first 2 books. You will very quickly get to know the other characters. You'll very quickly get to know the town that the books are set in. Any important thing that you need to know, that gap will be filled in. Hopefully it would then entice you to go back and read the first 2 books, but you could jump in at any point. Across the Pond, the first 3 books kind of form a trilogy. That was not really intentional because I wasn't really planning that series the way I was planning Independent Hearts, but like book 4 will be more less connected. When book 4 comes out, if you haven't read the first 3 books, you could dive straight into book 4. So it's kind of like either start at book 1 or start at book 4 kind of a thing. So Across the Pond, I started writing that as a solo book. It was just going to be a standalone. It was going to be 1 book. That would be it. I didn't initially plan on doing it as a series. I didn't really plan on doing it as a trilogy. That's just kind of how it worked out. I wrote the first book, A Brave Start, over the course of several years, so I really wasn't planning much. But I knew that I wanted to turn it into a series once I made the decision to publish it. I knew I was going to be publishing independently, and all the advice I was seeing in the indie publishing circles was publish a series. I was like, well, I can definitely turn it into a series. I didn't really intend on making it as a trilogy. I probably would have structured a lot of the plot differently if I'd done it as a trilogy from the beginning, because they are still kind of their own book, but they're not complete standalones that you don't need to read the other. So it's kind of this really weird in-between space. It wasn't written to be a trilogy, but that's still kind of how it ended up being. Across the Pond, I was just kind of making stuff up and making it work as I went along. Independent Hearts, I started specifically with 5 characters in mind. My idea, when I had the first idea for this series, originally it was going to be set in Oxford, and then I was just like, as much as I want to write something in Oxford, and I probably will do that eventually, I really wanted this series to be in a fictional town so that I had complete creative control over what kind of businesses, what kind of people were in the town. I just would be able to create my own little world, and that seemed to fit this series better. So the idea was, at its core, beyond the location, was independent women running independent businesses. Independent Hearts. I wanted to write a series where each book was a different one of these single women who is perhaps looking for love, but who also is an independent small business owner, runs their own shop or business of some kind. So Kate ends up needing to take over the bookshop, and that's the Bookshop of Possibilities. I knew that I would start with these 5. So Lydia and the Pub was book 2, so that's the Inn of Hopes and Dreams. It's an inn and pub, and eventually there'll be a book for Molly and her kind of farm business for the family, with the family, Bryn's pottery shop, Elise's candle shop, and beyond that, I know I want to do a bakery. I want to do a knitting or quilting or crafting shop of some kind. I want to do a flower shop. There's a Christmas shop owned by one of the grannies, and I know I want to do something based around the Christmas shop. I have to. There's one of the other grannies has an antique shop, so I know I'll do something with that. So Independent Hearts, I kind of started knowing each book would be a different one of these female characters running a different business within this town. I had the 5 that I'm starting with, and so those will be the first 5 books, but beyond that, it can keep going indefinitely. I'll just have new characters come to town. There's a whole bunch of male characters in terms of like brothers and cousins and things. Like, you can just keep inventing characters in each book. So as we get to like books 4 and 5, I can start laying the groundwork for other new characters that can then just keep populating the book. So that one I can just keep going forever. Royal Romance, I'm starting with 3 characters, so it will kind of be a trilogy of sorts, but they will be loosely connected. So it's 3 royal siblings, so each book will be a different one of those siblings, but then there's cousins who are also princes and princesses and duchesses and things like that. So I can keep just expanding it within the royal family. So that one is starting with 3. There's 3 books I know for sure, but I could expand and do at least 3 others based on characters already kind of on the playing board. But then I could probably just keep going even more. That one though, I think I might keep it to like 6 and then just start a different royal romance series or something, so we'll see. So yeah, those are how I've started outlining my current series. I think when it comes to doing an episodic standalone series, my biggest tip is to have an idea that does give you room to grow. So like, I feel like with Independent Hearts, it was everything set in the world of Olsenburg, Wisconsin, along the high street and all the businesses on the high street. And then I've got all of these different female characters in this friend group, and the friend group can expand. So book 1, Catherine's not, her family is from Olsenburg, but she's never lived in Olsenburg, but she moves from out of town. So I've already set with the beginning of the series that I can have new characters move to town. So we'll have 4 books now with characters who are from that town, but then with book 6, I can have someone else new come to town. So, room to grow. I think that's the biggest tip, is whatever your idea is, make sure that you've got room to add new characters, add new aspects of the location, or just something that gives you, like a family with 5 siblings, and each book is each of the different siblings, or an office with a bunch of co-workers, so everything's based around that company. Something like that that gives you that common thread throughout all the books. So that's episodic standalone series. I do have some notes on how to outline a continuing series, but I want to do some more writing first. So I'm gonna put my headphones back on and we will chat continuing series in a moment. Up to 1,116 words. I might still do some more writing later today. I might not. We'll see. If I take a few hours and like go to Whole Foods and do some other stuff, I could come back and do another few hundred words later today. Or I might just start working on some of my other projects. we will see. But I wanted to talk about how I would outline a continuing series and like my advice for outlining a continuing series. So I have not published it yet. I would like to publish it one day, but we're talking like well into the future. I have a fantasy series, supernatural, paranormal fantasy series, bit of romance, bit of action adventure mixed in. I really like it. I've written the first book, so I have a first draft of the first book of the series, and I think it would be 4 or 5 books. I kind of envision it to be 5. It could be only 4, but I kind of envision it to be 5. So basically there's 4, I don't want to give really anything away because a lot of it could still change, but there's 4 main components to this thing that they're searching for. And so the first 4 books could be the search for each of those 4 things. And then the 5th book would be what happens once all 4 pieces have been found. I'm leaning more towards 5 just so that that last book isn't a monster book. So I have this idea. I do want to go back and work on it. So when I go back to work on it, my plan is to outline the whole series before I go back and work on each individual book. When you're doing a continuing series, you really want to be thinking about and kind of asking yourself, and I would say answer these questions before you even think about how many books. But where does your series start? Where does your idea for it start? What's the inciting incident? Then you want to ask, where does it end? So what is everything going to be building up to? Remember, you can change your ideas while you're working on them, but still you kind of should have an idea of where does it start? Where does it end? How does the series wrap up? Then you want to think about what is the midpoint of your series. What happens halfway through that larger story that you're telling, that the first half has been building up to this moment, and then this moment really then sets you up for the second half of the series. Your midpoint for the series can come in the middle of the middle book, or it can come at the end of the middle book. Each book is still going to have its own plot arc. In my example of my fantasy series, there will be a kind of task or a journey, a goal for the characters in each book, and they have to accomplish that goal by the end of that book. But then in accomplishing the goal of each book, that's then going to kind of set the reader up and set the characters up for the start of the new journey and the new goal to accomplish in the next book. So when it comes to outlining, I am definitely a fill in the gaps outliner. I figure out my beginning, I figure out my end, I figure out some of the main kind of tentpole plot points in the middle, 5 to 10 key moments in the whole plot, and then I fill in the gaps in between. I ask myself, well, if this happens at the midpoint, what has to happen here to get me to here? And if this happens here, what has to happen back here to set things up? So it's, if this happens, then what has to happen next to make this thing further down the road happen or make sense or whatever. So it's the same thing for outlining a series. You want to figure out, where does your series begin? Where does your series end? What are kind of the main things that you think will happen in that series? So without thinking about it as book 1, book 2, book 3, think about your whole series as one book, one story. What then has to happen from one moment to the next to get them to all connect? When you're first starting to brainstorm your series, if it's a continuing series like this with a fixed end point, it will end at some point, but you don't yet know how many books, think about the series as just one big book. Don't think about it yet as individual books in a series and where each book will end and the next one will start. Just think about the story as a whole and figure out what are those big key moments, and then see if you can identify a certain number of, like, what are the biggest key moments. There'll be some things that seem like they're smaller scenes and other things that seem like these are really pivotal moments. If you find that you've got 3 really pivotal moments, you might then want to start thinking about it as a trilogy. If you feel like you've got 4 or 5 really key pivotal moments, so like for me, the characters finding the next piece of that thing, that's going to be a pivotal moment. So for me, knowing it's 4 pieces that they're searching for, and then there's going to be something that happens once they have all those pieces, that's what's making me think 5 books. You kind of want to see if your idea is naturally kind of grouping itself into a certain number like that, where you can see how it would make sense to have this book be about this part of the story and this book be about this part of the story. Each book should have its own arc that it follows, its own beginning, middle, and end. Even if that end is a bit of a cliffhanger, it's still an end of that story. So once you can kind of figure out what those key moments and those key scenes and those really pivotal moments and inciting incidents are, of course I have limited experience with doing this kind of series, but my hunch is that at that point you would start to feel like this is how many books you might be writing. So if you're a plotter like I am, you might do an abbreviated outline of each book in the series. Like once you figure out that full story, you can then start dividing it up into, this is kind of what I think would happen in each book, and this is how many books I think I would have. My plan for when I start outlining my whole series, I want to outline each book before I then start going back and editing book 1 and then writing the next books. So my outlines tend to be 15 to 20,000 words when I'm just writing any of my other standalone, interconnected standalone series. For a series outline, I would probably do 5 to 10,000 words per book, covering the main plot points and kind of a chapter by chapter description. So figuring out how many chapters roughly I would have. Obviously all of that can change, but I'd have this many chapters, and I would probably write then 100 to 200 words per chapter for a book outline as part of a series outline. So my goal is to have 5 to 10,000 words with 100 to 200 words ish per chapter for each book before I then go back and start writing them. If you're not a plotter, if you're a discovery writer, I'd still recommend outlining your series, but maybe you only do 1 to 2,000 words per book, and maybe it's just general ideas and thoughts and scenes and events, notes for scenes and events that you kind of know you want to include. You could discovery write a whole series with just, I want to write a series about a character who does X, Y, Z and meets a magical wizard along the way. Like, I don't know, you could just have like truly like just a 50-word in your head idea of your series and then discovery write the whole thing. But that sounds more complicated than my poor plotter brain can comprehend, so I have no advice on that. Like, you are on your own if you're going to do that. But you could. I just still think from a writing perspective, speaking as a coach and as a teacher who does really like outlines, I think even if you are a discovery writer, jotting down at least a few thousand words about your idea for the whole series and kind of figuring out at least a very rough map of what your plot is going to do across the books, where you're going to start, where you're going to end, what your rough midpoint is, I think is still a really valuable thing. Again, everything can change. My advice for whether you're doing an episodic series or a continuing series, to stay flexible. As you write the first book, you're going to get ideas for the next books, which is why I'm not going to super outline each book in the series of my fantasy series, because I know that once I start writing books 1 and 2, I'm going to get ideas for books 3 and 4 and 5. As I've been working on Across the Pond and Independent Hearts, I get ideas for the next books in the series all the time, and so that's why I have a project notebook. I can write down those notes so that I don't forget them when I come back to it. But you really want to stay flexible and be willing to kind of change ideas. And also remember, and I talk about this in a recent video where I talked about plot structure. Just as I talked about with plot structure, when you're plotting an individual book or you're plotting a series, the series isn't going to really come together until you start editing it. When you start editing that first book, you're going to get even more ideas for the next book. When you're editing the second book, you're going to get even more ideas still. So the important thing with series, I think, is figuring out what that full plot arc is, because once you have written the first couple books, you can't really go back and change those. So if you get a drastically different idea for the ending of the series, you're still going to have to make that work within the context of what you've already written. But if you take time to outline your series to begin with and really workshop a lot of different ideas for different directions your series can go, and do an abbreviated outline of each book in the series, and just kind of see how those smaller plot arcs of each book work within the larger plot arc, you can get a lot figured out before you start writing, so that when you do start writing, you've got a pretty good idea of this is the direction you're going in. So those are my thoughts on a series and how to write and plan a series. So if that's the only reason you clicked on this video, thanks for watching. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you would like. There'll be more of these sorts of videos coming. I am going to continue this vlog. I'll vlog a little bit more of the rest of the day, and if I write anything else, Mom is going to be on her way over here shortly. We're going to go to Whole Foods. So yeah, if you want to jump off here, you can. Let me know if anything in this video has helped. Let me know if you have experience plotting a series or outlining a series, or you can leave me some book emojis to let me know which ones of you lovely people have made it to this point of the vlog. But I am now going to go put some socks and shoes on and get ready. Mom should be on her way shortly, and then I will take you all to Whole Foods with me, and we'll have it's only 11. It's 10:56. Like, I can't believe I filmed the majority of a vlog and done all my writing for the day, and it's only 10:56 a.m. Okay, Mom's leaving now, so I really do need to go finish getting ready. Keep watching, and let's go to Whole Foods. So I've just been chattering away for like 3 minutes.
Marvelous thing.
Mom was dropping some amazing gems, and I wasn't recording.
All right, sorry everybody.
But as I was saying that you didn't see, I knew that if I didn't show Mom in the vlog, I would probably see some comments. So this is just a quick cameo from Mom. I will get her in another vlog soon. But we've had a lovely time at Whole Foods. I've bought some peonies and a little pink calico succulent plant, so I'm very excited about that. Mom was talking about, can you do it quickly?
The terrible air today.
Because why?
Because there was a mulch plant somewhere, a mulch.
A place where they process mulch.
Where they create mulch or whatever. It got on fire.
Yeah, the mulch got on fire.
And now it's just blowing in our direction, well, all across Phoenix.
Yeah, from the south up to the north.
Yeah, so of course the wind direction is to blow it all over us.
Yeah, so it doesn't...
Couldn't be the other direction where nobody lives.
It doesn't smell very nice up in our neighborhood anymore, so
and I have problems breathing.
Yeah, Mom's got asthma, so she's not been happy about that today. And I normally don't notice. She notices things sooner than I do, but even I can smell it, so you know it's bad when I'm noticing it.
A little bit through the car already.
Yeah, so this is what Mom has been talking about all morning. Anyway, say hi and goodbye.
Hi, goodbye.
And I will make sure Mom gets in a vlog again very soon. Okay. I'm back from my walk. It is time to wrap up this vlog, I think. It's been a lovely day, but it's been a long day. Like, I can't believe that, like, I filmed almost an entire vlog and did all my writing. Like, that was all before noon. It was today, but it feels like 2 days ago. That's how long this day has felt. So the last time I talked to you was briefly in the car. Mom and I had a nice time at Whole Foods, and then she dropped me off. I got everything unpacked. The peonies, they're beautiful. They're just gorgeous. I'm really hoping this will be a good batch. They've had peonies a few times over the last like month, but they just don't often look very good. They're $13 for 5 stems, so they're not cheap. The peonies are not the cheapest flowers I can get, but they are my favorite flowers. They are my absolute favorite flowers. And then I got that little calico succulent, so that's exciting. I've already got it in another empty candle jar like my other one is. Although looking at my older one, the one that's about a year old now, compared to the new one, like, I have technically kept it alive for a year. It just doesn't look as like thick and full, but I don't know. I think I do need to repot that one, so I need to take it over to my parents' house with me the next time I go and see if I can repot it and see if it just is happier in some fresh dirt and in a better pot. And I don't know, because I want that one to be nice still. But yeah, so after I got everything unpacked, I had lunch because that was important. Maintenance came, fixed the toilet. It took a few times, so he came and fixed it, we thought, and was in and out of here pretty quickly, which I was thinking, fantastic. Like, it always feels like when something breaks in this apartment, it's never a simple fix. It always involves, well, I've got to go back to the workshop to get this. No, that didn't work. And I've got to go back to the workshop to get this thing. And oh, now we need a part that we can't get until tomorrow. And it's just like, oh my gosh. He got it fixed in the end, but it was just, and it didn't take that long. I'd say it was like an hour total between coming and going and getting different parts and whatnot. So it's fixed now. That's what matters. Hopefully I won't have to have maintenance come by again for a while. And then I thought I would do some more writing today, but I ended up just editing the vlog for tomorrow pretty much all afternoon. It was not, I thought I had started editing it, but I hadn't. So I had the whole vlog to edit. So that will be the last vlog that you saw prior to this one. And then as soon as that was done, I was like, well, it's nearly 5 o'clock. If I'm gonna go for a walk, this is the time. So I went for a walk. It was a bit warm, 89. It's only just come down to 88. So it was 89 degrees for like the whole walk. A little bit breezy, not as much as yesterday. Yesterday's walk was lovely. It was very breezy yesterday. It was still nice out. And the wind must have changed directions because I did not smell the mulch fire bad air that we were smelling earlier today. I completely forgot about that for my entire walk. And then just as I was getting back to my apartment, I was like, oh yeah, the air wasn't too good earlier, but no, seemed fine just now. Maybe Mom would have still smelled something, but I was fine, so I enjoyed my walk. Stopped at the pool and stuck my feet in, which felt really nice. I have so many blisters on one of my feet. Like, it's just one blister will start to heal, but then another blister forms on top. So like I've got layered and like overlaid blisters, one on top of each other across the whole like bottom of the ball of my one foot. I don't know what to do other than not walk, and that's just not an option for me. But it's like I'm doing just enough walking that one blister will start to heal, but then I go for another walk and another blister forms. And I don't know why, because I'm using my hiking shoes and they're really good, but for some reason, yeah, they're still, my feet are getting aggravated. So yeah, I'm now home. I desperately need a shower and then make some dinner and then settle in. I've got a ton of YouTube to watch, I think, and then maybe something else. I don't know, but I really don't want to stay up late tonight because I did not sleep hardly at all last night, so I want to go to bed. But the nice thing is I don't have to worry about maintenance coming by tomorrow because everything's taken care of. So I can sleep in just a tiny bit tomorrow, which will be nice. I think that's all I have to tell you. It's been a lovely day. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I hope you enjoyed the last bit of this vlog if you continued watching after the end of all the writing chat. Thank you to those of you who made it here. I told earlier to leave book emojis, so I need to give you guys a different emoji. Leave me some cactus emojis if you made it all the way to the end of this video. That way I'll know who didn't click off earlier in the vlog. So leave me some cactus emojis if you made it all the way to the end of the vlog. There's this one kind of cactus and I don't know the name of it, but it's blooming right now. The bloom season, I've said this before, it's just been so bizarre this year, but I'm loving it because it means that even in June, there's still stuff blooming. Yeah, so leave me some cactus emojis or some pink flower emojis because it was a pink flower on the end of this one cactus and it's really, really pretty. And yeah, I don't know that I have a question. So we can either talk series planning or whatever you want to tell me. Just, you can tell me something, whatever you want. I'm too tired to think about it. So I'm gonna go get myself sorted out. I will show you the rest of my evening and I will see you very soon in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye!